And now for something completely different. So you have this in your, you have this. Wait, I need this too. I'm struggling today, people. Not sure why. So you may be aware, I hope you are, that the leadership got together for a retreat last Sunday. And we spent about 3 hours together, and it was incredibly positive. Now, there were some rough spots, there's no doubt. But for the most part, I think we came out with a bit of a plan about how we want to move forward this year, and information is going to be coming to you in pieces so that we can have a chance to absorb that, okay? But I want to share with you one of the exercises that we did because I want you to have the same opportunity to do that same exercise. And so you'll notice in your bulletin, you have this lovely little sheet, and if you turn it over, it explains what we've got here. This diagram is called the church life cycle. It is based in research, so I didn't just make it up. That's important to note, okay? And this is the true life cycle of every congregation. And what the research tells us is that how we intervene in what we do, depending on where we are in our life cycle, determines how we move forward and how well we move forward. So, for example, obviously, this is the new church down here at the bottom. Everyone's excited, small, probably, but excited, very strong with mission. They know exactly what they're about. And then it grows and moves into what we call a solvent or a healthy church where membership is booming, programming is booming, the staff is available and present to be able to support those missions and ministries and programming inside the church. And in the life of every congregation, at some point, that begins to decline. And when it starts to decline, churches start to focus mostly on keeping it together. They focus on structures and governance and all of those things, less on mission and formal ministry and outreach. And some churches continue to decline, and they end up down here in what we call the quadrant of the dying church. And once we get down here, there is a lot of scapegoating and finger-pointing about how we got to where we are today. There's people start to walk away from the congregation, and all of that is written for you here, although in relatively small print, so I apologize for that. So let me just pull out a couple things in case you are unable to read this. So in the second quadrant, so up here in your left, churches are driven by increased worship attendance and program development and staffing, right? So again, everything is vibrant and moving and growing. And then there comes a point, again, it is natural in the life cycle that when we continue to do the same things, that eventually we have some decline, which you see over here. And so here's where we focus primarily on maintaining the institution. So we want to keep the status quo, we want to keep it the way it is and keep it moving the way it is. And then it continues to decline typically. And down here, resources, ministries, programs, and staff are greatly diminished or have disappeared. And so there's a lot of finger pointing about who's responsible. Churches have low self-esteem and high conflict, and a lot of regret. Feelings of nostalgia, like, I wish we could go back to the way it was, and disappointment and anger are the dominant emotions down here. Okay? Now, before we have a little exercise we're going to do here, so before we do that, does anybody have a question about this? Can you see it? Do you understand what we're talking about? Everybody good? Okay. So what I'm going to ask you to do is I want you to take a minute and I want you to think seriously about where you believe this congregation is right now in its life cycle. Okay? Now, if you were present at the retreat on Sunday, you do not get to play again. Okay? So only those...
What if we're more optimistic after being at the leadership retreat?
It doesn't matter, you don't get to play, remember? So, yeah. So, we'll talk about that right after we play. Okay? So here's what I'd like you to do. Let me set this down for a moment. And again, what did I do with my bowl? Why am I functioning so horrible? I should not drive anywhere today. Okay, so here's what I'd like you to do. If you were not at the retreat on Sunday, I would like you to come forward. I'm going to give you a dot. You're going to peel it off, and you're going to stick it. Well, we're not down here, so if you put it down here, you're not paying attention. Okay? just for the record. So I want you to put your dot anywhere along the line that you think represents where we are right now. Not where we were yesterday or where you want us to be next week, but where you think we are right now. Does anybody not understand the task at hand? Okay, now if you were at home, you can see this and the explanations, I believe, but you cannot put a dot. Sorry, I can't help with that. Okay, we haven't figured out how to do that. Exactly. Okay? All right, so when you think you know what you want, now is there anybody who wants me to place a dot for you? That's always dangerous, but anyone who cannot or does not want to come forward? Okay, let's do it. You only get one dot, though. This is not Chicago. You got it? Got one? Okay. It doesn't matter. It's the same pile. I just am trying to expand my opportunity for, there you go. You got to follow her now because she's, oh, go ahead, Michael. There you go. I'm standing in the completely wrong place. Yep, they're all the same. They're different colors, but it doesn't matter, okay? You only get one. Yes, don't cheat. There's no cheating.
And just take one.
Just take one, again. They are. You have to kind of... Do you want to put one too? Sure, she says. Mm-hmm. Who knew you were going to have this much fun today, right? It's in there somewhere. Got it? There you go. Yep. Okay. So there's your picture. I'm leaving. No, I'm just kidding. Lindsay, do you have the mic? Okay. Does anybody want to make a comment about what they see? Allow me to get out of the way one more time. Anybody? Nothing? Nobody has a comment. Fascinating. Well, God knows I do. So, now here's what the research tells us. First of all, you're in pretty much agreement. At least we don't have people on the left and the right side. So we're in relative agreement. The question here is the depth of the decline. Okay? Now, here's what the research tells us. That when we're up in this area up here, we still have an opportunity, a relatively strong one even, to revitalize the congregation. But what the research also tells us is that means you have to actually revitalize the congregation. So that does not mean that if we get a few more bodies in here, then we'll be okay. What that means is we have to look at mission and ministry, why we are here, and look at doing things differently, because doing them the way that you've been doing them is how we do this to here. Everybody clear about that, what I'm saying? Now, what the research also tells us is that when you start to get down here, being able to turn this back up is possible and extremely difficult. That's just the truth. Now, I want to show you where the leadership fell on this little map. I got things, I don't know what to say. Anybody have a guess about, I'm good, I think. I don't know. Anybody? Yeah. Yeah, will you say that again? Let's get you a mic, though, because I think you're... Go ahead.
When you're in leadership of the church, you understand the underbelly of what goes on.
How the sausage gets made. Right.
And you also have been trying to do this for decades. Mm-hmm. So, and they're wonderful people in this church.
Mm-hmm. There are.
We have never agreed on everything in the past, and we never will in the future.
Absolutely not. Right.
So it's how we go from here that makes the change.
Absolutely. Thank you. Anybody else? Can you see that? If you're in the back, you might have to stand up. Or actually, why don't you hold it? Would you hold it? Here, give me the mic. You do that. Okay, great. So what you'll notice is that leadership, because of what they know, because the amount of time that they spend dealing with the constant issues, they don't have the luxury of coming to worship on Sunday and going home, or coming in and dropping their kids off at CE and coming to worship and going home, because they understand all the pieces. They have moved their way down here. Okay? This is not unusual either, that leadership would have a slightly different view, and some would say more realistic, honestly, because of what they know. Okay? Any other comments about this? Okay. Thank you. You can probably take that with you. I don't know. Thanks, Vanna. You're swell. So here's what this means for us, in my humble, here you go, opinion. This is the year. If this congregation doesn't do something different than what it's been doing, there is no place to go except here. And the research says that. And ultimately, you're saying the same thing. You know what's in front of you. Now, the good news is that the leadership at the retreat came up with some very creative ways to try to get at what might happen next. Okay? So on the 27th, I believe, you're going to hear from a group of people about a new leadership structure. Again, remember that we started a council year without a moderator or a vice moderator. And so I asked the mod squad to come visit with me, which I do a lot, or often anyway, and they came up with a concept for a new way to lead for this year that will help us open things up a little bit. That will be presented to you at the congregational meeting that we're having on April 3rd. Thank you. Okay? So you'll have to approve that. So if you're not at the meeting, which will happen here, and then downstairs for lunch, because we're going to do a little more work like this together, okay? So we need you to be here on the 3rd, and we need a quorum so that we can vote yes or no on that new leadership structure. No quorum is a no vote. That's how that works, okay? Then, the other thing that you'll learn is that Josh Dyer was very kind and generous and perhaps possessed to say yes, that he would facilitate and chair the council. So let's thank Josh for stepping up for that. Now, just a constitutional question, you do not need to approve that because since that happened outside and after the annual meeting, the council has the right and the authority to do so, so they elected him, okay? We do not have a vice chair, just for the record. All right. And then the third thing that you're going to hear about as we unfold this is another group of people that will be, we'll start with the former transition team. It will be invited to participate in this. And then we have a couple of other people that have already stepped up. And this team will be the group, we haven't named it yet because we can't come up with anything clever, so give us a minute. But this will be the team that helps us figure out how we're going to move this ball down the field. What are we going to do different? So you might call them a visioning team or a dream team or a design team, or we don't know exactly. But they will be trying to help move through the congregation some ideas for what to do differently. One of the other things that happened is the recognition that this building is a financial albatross around the neck of this congregation, and we have to be able to do something about that. And you know that. And so we're going to be forming a building use task force designed to help us figure out how we can better utilize the space, who else we can partner with to use the space, and how that might help us offset some of the costs of keeping the lights and the heat on in this space. And Joanna Dye has volunteered to chair that. Thank you, Joanna. And so if you are interested in helping with that and participating in that task force, please speak to Joanna, because if she doesn't actually have a task force, then it's really not one, if you know what I mean. Okay? And I don't think we have anybody else on that right this minute, correct? Christy Bailey is in. Thank you, Christy. Okay? Is that it? You and Christy? And Marcia, who's not here today, right? Okay. Marcia Renaud. Okay? So this is where we are. So on the 3rd, we ask you to come. We're going to start again in here so we can get everyone online involved in the voting that we need to do to approve the new leadership structure. Okay? And then we will move. Are those the only 2 votes we have to take, Josh? Is that right? That's the only votes for the leadership structure, right? Okay. And then we're going to go downstairs, we're going to have some lunch, and we're going to do some work together that will help that design, dream, vision team yet to be named, player to be named later, okay, that will help them do their work. Because the truth is, their job is to help you answer the big questions so we know what to focus on, so that we can hopefully turn this tide back up here. That's the goal, okay? Now, here's the other thing I want to say to you, is let's not forget that we started this year with, in real dollars, about $120,000 deficit. You will be presented, that's the second vote, you will be presented on the 3rd with a plan about what to do about that, okay? Because we definitely cannot move forward if all of our focus is on trying to figure out where we're going to get $120,000. Because if that's the focus, that's all we do this year. Does that make sense so far? Okay. I know I can't really see you, so no one's running out screaming. I take that as a decent sign, I guess. Okay. So you come on the 3rd, we have those 2 votes, we go downstairs, and then we have some lunch, and we talk about where you feel we need to focus. Now, anybody who was at the retreat have anything else that you think I should be talking about that I've missed? Back there in the back. Shirley, she's coming to you.
I think it would have been interesting if we had done another dot chart at the end of our meeting, because I think that there was a lot of positive thinking that came out of the meeting, and I think our spirits were lifted.
Yes. Now, I don't think that changes this reality, though, right? Because this is still what it is. But I think what Shirley's getting at is by the time we left, there's a true sense that maybe we have an idea about how we might be able to turn this back. Okay? So all is not lost here, my friends, but here's the thing. I'm thinking about the gospel reading today. And I'm thinking about the way Jesus is like, if you want to die, if you're a prophet and you want to die, go to Jerusalem. Your leadership team and you, this is prophecy here. This does not feel like good news. But our job is to not put our head in the sand about it. Our job is to circle the wagons and go, we only have, and this is my opinion, we've only got one shot here, honestly. Because if we continue down here any farther, it is too late. And that's just research backed. Now it's just a matter of how long it takes. Okay? And so we need everybody on board. We need everybody to grab an oar and row this boat in a new direction. If you leave it to your leadership team alone to do the heavy lifting, this will not succeed. Okay? Now, the good news is, this is a possible thing to do here. If I didn't think it was possible, I would bow out, because I have no interest in hospice chaplaincy. I did that already. Okay? So this is not a lost cause. This is not a pretty sight. It's not, but it is real. And we can move past this. And remember, Jesus said about Jerusalem, about the place that kills its prophets, about the place that doesn't want to hear the truth, I long to gather you under my arms like a mother hen with her chicks. This is the same God who's still here, people. This is the God who wants to gather us up and go, okay, it's all right. It's all right. Now what are we going to do together? Okay? But I honestly believe that has to happen this year. Okay? So join us on the 3rd. Do what you have to do. Clear your calendars. All right? Your leadership team is, if not excited, at least positive about the potential of what we can do here. But we can't do it without you, because you're the people they're trying to lead. So we need your voice. We need your participation. Okay? Any other questions or comments about this or anything else I've said? Hang on, just going to get your microphone. What do you have, oh wise one?
I think that if people help out later, we should do another dot chart to see if the dots go up.
Exactly. That'd actually probably not be a bad idea. Out of the mouth of babes, right? No, it's okay. No, you have to use the mic so everybody else can hear you.
Do you know what constitutes a quorum for this congregation?
I do. I think we run right about 50, don't we? Yeah, right around 50. And of course, you'll be able to, we'll live stream that, so you'll still be able to do that if you're at home, and we'll be able to get your votes. We learned from the last meeting we have to go a little slower on that. So we'll slow the roll when it comes to the voting, make sure we get everybody who's online, make sure their voices get heard as well. Okay? Well, I think it has to happen in the next 12 months for sure, but we have to have a really solid idea very quickly. I mean, right? Because churches don't do anything fast, right? So to say, oh yeah, let's get on that, in 6 months there might be a sign that we did that, right? So I will be pushing the timeline a bit to keep the momentum going, because the other thing I'm concerned about, just because I've seen this happen a lot, is people get really excited and go, oh yeah, and then life takes over and it loses steam. And my point to you is, it is, in my opinion, that if we lose steam on this before we have a solid direction forward and we're moving some things, again, I think then the writing's on this wall. Okay? Now, the other thing I want to say to you is, please know that you are not exceptional. This is the story for most mainline Christian churches in this country right now. Maybe even across the globe, I don't know. But I don't know about that. But in this country for sure. Okay? And so we're just struggling with the same thing that everybody else is struggling with. The question is whether or not if we're willing to let go of some things enough to try something new. Because the other point, again, I cannot say this enough. This is not an option. Climbing back up this line is not an option. It doesn't work like that. So you can't just turn the clock back and go, well, if we do what we did 2 years ago, or 5 years ago, or 10 years ago, then we're going to be fine. The outside culture keeps changing. This is happening because churches don't. Okay? So we can turn this, but to turn that means that we have to, instead of going this way or this way, we have to come back around. Okay? Or if we're down here, well, that's a whole nother issue. So we have to try to come back around, which means we have to reinvent and reinvest, mostly personal energy, okay? Now, that does not mean that we throw the baby out with the bathwater. It does not mean that everything that's been good in this congregation gets tossed aside. What it means is we're very careful and selective about what is fundamental to First Congregational Church, and that we keep. And the pieces that aren't fundamental, we're willing to say maybe those non-fundamental things are no longer necessary, but what might be? Does that make sense? Okay? Everybody gets an oar and puts it in water, right? Otherwise, we're just a really big ship floating aimlessly, right? All right. Nothing else?
Can I make a comment?
Josh, hang on.
Oh.
You don't need to run. Life's too short for that.
I don't know if it was said earlier, but lunch will be provided that day on April 3rd. So,
Yes, lunch is provided. Show up, we'll feed you. It would be helpful to RSVP at the office, though, so we make sure we have enough food for you. Otherwise, Josh won't get to eat because he's the moderator in the sermon, so he has to eat last. So that's how it works. Okay? Yep.
I know a lot of this stuff, all of a sudden we kind of clam up and we start getting really scared about it. And that's okay. That's an emotion that is going to come through. It's what we do with that. A lot of times our fear is what pushes us back, and we keep taking steps back, and we keep taking steps back. That fear, what we do with it, what is one of the best ways to do is start to learn about it. Learn about what that world on the outside, society is evolving. What is it they need? And so I understand there's people in this congregation that was baptized here, married here, love this congregation, this is home. And I address that because I know that it is so important to you. And we're also here to help the community, to listen to God. And so that fear, take a minute, let it sink in, then move yourself forward in learning what we can do with it.
All right, I would like everyone to stand as you're able for just a second. You have to put down all your things. And I want you to do this. No, we're not evangelicals, and I'm not going to ask anybody want to pray in tongues, have at it, right? Right? But this, right? Let your body feel the receptivity of this, the openness of this, the praise and the trust of God in this. This church will go where God wants it to if we are faithful, and that is our only job. Amen.